Oh, this is exciting stuff here. This is the responsibility matrix, work breakdown structure, and Gantt charts, basic project planning. Ooh, fun stuff. So what we're going to be doing, you typically create a work breakdown structure, and you're going to say, here's the project, and I'm going to break it into tasks. If I'm building a house, I'm going to have to do the foundation. I'm going to have to get approval for planning. I'm going to have to do the plumbing, rough-in plumbing, rough-in electrical, all these different things. And those would be divided into other sections. Add heating and cool. Those are different sections. So you lay it out. You can lay it out in a hierarchical formula with a level here and a couple of levels deep. We're not going to do much deeper than this class, about 3 levels. Gets too nitty-gritty. If you're doing a big project with 200 or 300 tasks, then you do it. But in this class, we're just going to go through about 3 levels. But you need to know who's going to do what. Have you ever had a task and you looked to see who had done a task and nobody did it? And they said, I thought John was going to do that. And you go, and John says, you never gave it to me. You need a responsibility matrix. So what is that? You might have, you're going to, and then there's different types of lettering, but in this text, typically we use PS, N, and A. So you've got a primary person. There's only one primary. I'm going to be in charge of the foundation. I'm going to be that person. Appoint a secondary person, because if I get sick, I'm going to need somebody to jump in there and take over the work. You can have more than one secondary. One primary. I've got to notify the supervisor over this area. So that's what the N's for. The A, I might have to get approval for this because I might have to have extra equipment or extra materials, or that it's going to be for the rocket testing at SpaceX. I need to get approval from the FAA before I do this test, up into the low orbital flight. I'm gonna have to get approval for this section. So P primary, S secondary, N, and A. So what does that look like? Well, you put the tasks over here on one side, and then who's going to be in charge of that up here at the top, and then you put P, N, S, A. You could have multiple letters with something. One primary, just one. Now, in other labeling, you'll see R-I, what is it, C, can't remember all of them. If you look in your book, there are different ways to label these, but typically it's the same type deal. Here are the tasks, and the people you assign to them. John's going to do, he's being in charge of the design of the project. Susan's going to be in charge of finances. Each person has a designated task, and you need a secondary. I designed we were working on palm tops, and we were able to take BlackBerries in 98, 99, and do encrypted local, state, and federal queries. So I would be driving through Knoxville, and I'd run a listing and find a stolen car next to me and call the local police and have them come pull dude over. It's kind of nice. Also, who's dating my daughter? Oh, he has bad driving. Anyway, you need a primary person and you need a secondary. We had outsourced part of the coding to a contractor. And halfway through the project, the contractor, the guy that was doing the coding, he didn't have a secondary, got a better offer. So he leaves all this uncommented code. Big hiccup. So you need to see who's responsible. The guy designing the case for one of these that we did early on, made the palm top about this big. It was huge. And they said, is it okay? Yeah, it's fine, except that I'll use it for a window tray at Sonic. I can just put that on it's too big. So that's why we went with the RIMS pager back in the day. It was small. They killed that project. You know why? My boss said, yeah, you can do local, state, and federal queries. They said that was really good, but it's so stupid. This was 98, 99. It said, we're going to kill this project. I said, why? We're under budget. We're on time. And they said, it's stupid that adults would be typing with their thumbs. What a dumb idea. That's when I signed up for grad school and went back, got my master's and doctorate. Oh, well, no telling. Scheduling basics, you want a list of tasks. In a work breakdown structure, you're going to have all the tasks listed. Don't go smaller than a work package. And a work package is this person's going to do the job for this many, like I'm going to use a carpenter or a programmer at $35 an hour for 10 hours. Don't go more detailed than that, because no plan in the military, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. In project planning, no plan survives too detailed a project plan. It's going to change. All right, so you do a logical sequencing of, just like we were talking about going to work, you can't put on your socks after putting on your shoes. Just doesn't work. You've got to do things in a logical order. There was a guy back in World War I, Henry Gantt, and he came up with a chart, a way to show munitions were being managed. And he drew it out. He listed the task, and then he drew a line saying, here's how far. He'd have a kind of a block, and he'd color in the block as it was completed. And you could tell where you were on the task. Ooh. You know, you come up with a new tool, and we'll call it by your name, and then we can go from there, and maybe you could start selling it, going around and give seminars on it. But essentially, it's you look at an activity, and then which processors and how much predecessors and how much time it takes. We did that in the diagramming. You might look at the different tasks here, the top level, project manager, and different things. And a Gantt chart looks kind of like this. All right. So I've got this baseline at the top. Here's the length of the project that we expect. Here, task. And I've got a time estimate, how long it takes to do that task. And if it's filled in, I've completed that task. At some point, I might want to do a status line, and that's kind of here, and see where I am. If this is week 10 of the project, I might look at where I am during this portion and see if I'm complete here or I'm ahead of schedule. I might have not even started the task. I may be ahead of time on it. It doesn't really show you interdependence between the different tasks, a little bit, but it's a good glance and see where you are, and that's what they didn't have prior to that. There was no planning. One of my students, Stephen Van Dyke, who worked on the ballistic missile program, and he'd been working on his dissertation 1 day a week, and 4 days a week he'd be all over the country working on it. He came back to me one day. They didn't have any coordination in the different sections, and he added a lot of that. He came in one day and said, hey, they cut my project $75 million today. I said, is that big, crippling? He said, nah. Drop in the bucket. I'm going, be nice. Of course, when you're trying to hit a bullet with a bullet, it's kind of difficult. But he showed them charting. He did his dissertation on when do you take one technology and replace it with another one. So when do you take spinning hard drives versus solid state drives? at the time, when do you stop? Because the spinning hard drives were improving pretty much in capacity and speed, but there were limitations. So as you look at that, the old Christensen curve that you're looking at, there's limitations in improvements that you get, and there are inertial effects that you don't have with solid state drives that you had to be cognizant of when you're doing it with ballistic missiles, if nothing else. So you look at this, it's easy to understand, it's easy to see where you are in a Gantt chart. It's very good for, oh, here's where I obtain approval, this is how I'm doing with stockholders. But the thing to remember is it's just a glance thing. It's not a very good detailed way to do it. It's good for large projects. It isn't good for software projects that are smaller scale.